Hi guys, so I'm here with my October reading wrap up. When I'm recording this, there's actually a couple of days left in October, but I know I'm not going to finish reading anything else because I'm currently reading Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas, and I'm only about 15% of the way through, and I know for a fact that I'm just not going to get any more of that read, so this is everything that I've basically managed to finish reading in October. I've done quite well. I've managed to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books, I think. So I'm really happy with that. I've, for the most part, really enjoyed everything that I've read. So it's a lot of historical romance this month. I really just got into that sort of mood, that was what I was really wanting to read. If you've been following my weekly vlogs, then you'll know that I had good intentions of sort of reading Halloween October themed reads, and that just didn't really pan out. I read one and that was about it. So without further ado, I'll get on with the wrap up. So the first book that I read was For the Duke's Eyes Only by Lenora Bell. This is the second book in her School for Dukes series, and I really loved the first book in the series, which I read earlier on in the year, which was What a Difference a Duke Makes. So I was really excited for this one, and I did really enjoy it. I think I slightly preferred the first one, but I still really enjoyed this one. It's about a lady called India, and she's very different to your typical Regency historical heroine. She wears trousers, she travels, she is an archaeologist, so she's quite different in that respect. She is really independent, and she's sort of, in the pursuit of historical knowledge, and she has kind of an enemy who is the Duke of Ravenwood, and they used to be childhood friends. They were supposed to get married, their parents was, pushed them together, but she actually wanted them to get married. She thought she loved him, and then he betrays her, and she literally just can't stand him. Whenever they bump into each other, they're always fighting, but it turns out that maybe the Duke of Ravenwood is not all that he seems. Really enjoyed this one. Like I say, I think I preferred the first one just a little bit, but I ended up giving this like 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. So the next book that I read, like I said, I was still very much on sort of historical Regency kick. So I read Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas. Lisa Kleypas is one of my all-time favourite historical romance authors. This is one of her older books, and I have been on a mission to collect all of her books, which has not been an easy mission, but one I think I've nearly completed. So yes, anyway, I decided to pick this one up, and I really enjoyed this one. It's not my favourite by her, but I still really enjoyed it. It's kind of a standalone novel for her. Some of her novels, she's written a few series or a couple of duologies, but this one I think is just on its own, and it's about a lady called Amanda and a man called Jack, and they meet by accident, kind of. Amanda is turning 30, and she's not married, she's a spinster and an author, so she decides to basically hire herself a gentleman for the evening of her 30th birthday. So when Jack turns up at her door, that's what she thinks he is, but actually he's not, but he's sort of instantly attracted to her, but he doesn't want marriage or anything like that. So it's sort of how their relationship goes from there. But I did really enjoy this one. Took a little while for things to sort of... Things happened at the beginning, but then it sort of slowed down before it kicked in again, if that makes sense. But really enjoyed this one, and I gave it 4 out of 5. Then I picked up Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. This I was adamant I would be reading in October, and I was so pleased that I did it. Literally, when I first started this, I could start reading it, read 100 pages before I even realised I'd done it. It was very fast paced. If I hadn't had to, you know, to go to work Monday to Friday, I think I could have finished this in just a couple of days. But it's quite a chunker, but the text is quite large. It's brilliant. So it's made up of 2 parts. The first bit is, I don't know if you'll be able to see, so the smaller section is the part of the book which is basically recapping Hocus Pocus, and the bigger section of the book is the sequel portion. So it's set 25 years later, and it follows Max and Alison's daughter Poppy and the mischief that she gets up to on Halloween, and accidentally bringing back the Sanderson sisters. This is an absolute must read for any fan of Hocus Pocus. I can't recommend it enough. 5 out of 5. So then I read Then Came You by Lisa Kleypas. As you can see, I was still very much in the Regency historical mood. Again, this is one of Lisa Kleypas's older books, and I actually, once I read this, picked up the second book. This is duology. I can't remember if it's, I think it's just called The Gamblers, like 1 and 2. So yeah, I read them literally one after the other. So this is the first book, and it's about a lady called Lily, and she's known as Lawless Lily. She completely defies convention. She gambles, she wears breeches, she goes hunting, and she is completely the opposite of her sister, who Alex, Lord Rayford, is convinced that he is going to marry, but Lily doesn't want her sister trapped in a loveless marriage, particularly to this Lord Rayford, who she thinks is completely unsuitable for her sister. So she sets about to stop the marriage, and Alex thinks that Lily is the complete opposite of what a woman should be, and yet he finds himself sort of falling for her. It was a really good book. I actually enjoyed this one more than I thought I would in the end, so I would give this one 4 out of 5. And the second book follows so where Lily goes to gamble in Then Came You is Craven's, and this book follows Derek Craven, who is her friend and owns Craven's, and a lady called Sarah, who is an author, and she meets Derek one night when she's out researching for her novel. She likes to write about sort of real life, so she likes to interview prostitutes, and so she's staking out basically gambling dens to watch people come and go because she can't get in there. And she sees Derek being attacked, and she actually ends up saving his life. And in return, she wants him to grant her access to his gambling den, basically. And she's sort of the complete opposite of Derek. Derek's sort of really low-born. He's not a lord or anything. He is just a mister. And he thinks that she is far too good for him, and that he will basically corrupt her and dirty her, but there's an attraction there, but he fights it more than she does, even though she's not officially engaged, but it's kind of an unspoken engagement from a guy from her young village, her quiet, sleepy sort of country village, and yet once she spends time with Derek, she starts to see not the flaws in him, but that maybe she's not as suited to this guy as she thought she was, because she has to change herself to for this Perry to like her, whereas she's herself with Derek. It's a really, really good novel. I preferred this book to the first book, so I gave this one 4.5 out of 5. The next book that I read was Saga Volume 9. This came out this month. I was eagerly anticipating this to arrive, so yeah, I read this in one evening, one sitting. I always look forward to these coming out, and now that I've finished it, I'm kind of at a loss waiting for the next volume. The way this one ends is just on such a cliffhanger, and I need volume 10 now. I gave this one also 4 out of 5. The next 2 books are books that I read on my Kindle, and they are The Duchess Deal and The Governess Game by Tessa Dare. And again, these are historical romance novels. I might have read Tessa Dare in the past, but nothing particularly stands out to me that yes, I have read her. And the first book I had received on NetGalley, and I hadn't got to it yet. And when I was in this sort of historical mood, I was like, I'm going to read that because I thought I'd better have a break from Lisa Kleypas. Otherwise, I was going to have gone through all her books and have nothing else to read by her. So I picked up the Duchess Deal and I read it in about 2 days. It was a very fast read. Really, really enjoyed it. It was her writing is quite humorous. It really sort of made me smile. I can't remember the characters' names, unfortunately, and I don't have the physical book in front of me, but it's about sort of a duke that has been injured in the war and he's very scarred, and he thinks he's ugly basically, and he was supposed to marry someone, but they basically took one look at him and refused to marry him, so he's very bitter. And then one day this seamstress turns up on his doorstep basically wearing a wedding gown, and she says, this was the gown that, you know, your fiance was supposed to wear. I've spent God knows how much time, how much effort in this dress. You are to pay me for this dress. And he ends up proposing to her because he very much feels like he needs an heir to carry on his father's legacy, and no one else will marry him. So it was a really interesting premise. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was very fast paced, really enjoyed it, and it definitely made me want to pick up more Tessa Dare, so that's why I then went on and read the second book, which is The Governess Game. And it's nice, the some of the characters that appear in The Duchess Deal do appear in this one. So one of the main characters' friends in that book gets her story in this, and I thought it was really, really cute. I know her name in this book was Alexandra, and I can't remember what his name was. But basically she goes round and she sets people's clocks to Greenwich Mean Time. And she turns up at this house basically to ask if they need her services, and she gets mistaken for a governess. And the gentleman has 2 young girls that aren't his children, but they have become his under like guardianship, and they've driven off all the governesses, so he assumes that she's a governess, and the story goes from there. Again, really, really funny, really cute, really enjoyed this book, and I also gave that one 4 out of 5. The next book that I read was Stranger in My Arms by Lisa Kleypas. After my little Lisa Kleypas break, I decided I just had to pick up another one of her books, and this was the one I chose, again because this is kind of a standalone of hers. It's not a duology or part of a series, and this one took a little while to get going for me, bit of a slow burn, but I ended up really enjoying it. But I only gave it about 3.5 out of 5 because compared to the other Lisa Kleypas books that I read in the month, this one wasn't quite as enjoyable for me, but I did still enjoy it. So it's about a lady called Lara, and she's quite enjoying being widowed. Her husband was a duke, or was he an earl? He was an earl, and he went off to India and got himself killed, but it didn't work out too badly for her because their marriage was completely loveless. He was quite horrible to her. He didn't love her, he loved another woman. He married her out of duty, and so he could be quite cruel to her. But then one day basically their lawyer turns up and said no, actually he is still alive, but not all is as it seems. Is it him? Is it not him? How can this person look like him but act completely different? So there was an element of mystery there. Like I say, not my favourite, but it was good, just in comparison to the previous Lisa Kleypas books I have read and had read this month. This one wasn't quite up to par. So the last book that I managed to finish in October was on my Kindle, and that was Splendid by Julia Quinn. Julia Quinn is another historical romance author. I have read in the past a few of her books, but not many. I've read, I think, 3 of her Bridgerton books, I want to say. And I decided, because I had one of her books show up for review, I decided actually I would try and read some more Julia Quinn. So I came across Splendid, and when I downloaded it, I didn't actually realise it was her first ever novel. And I read it and I really enjoyed it. So it's about, oh my goodness, I've forgotten their names as well. How terrible was that? Oh, Emma. I remember her name is Emma, and I think his name is Alex, funnily enough. So she's an American. Her dad sent her to have sort of a season really in London with family, but she really wants to take over his shipping business in America. She feels like she's fully able to do that, but unfortunately, you know, women don't run businesses. So even though she's able, her father's like, you know, it won't work. So he sends her really over there to try and get her married. And her aunt plans to give like a great, you know, introductory ball to introduce her to London society. But beforehand, she decides to sneak out dressed as a maid just to get away from the hustle and bustle of the planning of the ball. And she ends up saving a little boy that's about to be run over. And it turns out that he is a duke's nephew. And sort of he is taken with Emma straight away, but she pretends that she doesn't admit to being Emma. She makes out that she's a maid called Meg. And then obviously he turns up at the ball and discovers that all is not what it seems. I really enjoyed it. I found it a very fast-paced book. I think I read it in about 2 days, if not 3 days. It was very fast-paced. I really enjoyed it. And I will definitely be checking out the other books in that series because I loved it. So that's everything I managed to get read this month, guys. If you've read any of these books or any of them are on your wish lists, let me know in the comments down below. I always love to know. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Happy reading.